look, when you get the World Economic Forum, you know, some of the individuals involved with them advocating for Western intervention in Ukraine, which many people fear could trigger a nuclear conflict or a greater conflict. You're like, these Great Reset people sure do want a war. Maybe not all of them, I don't know, but enough of them. And that's kind of scary. You know, so you're going to get a lot more people who are going to believe these kinds of conspiracies, or who are going to believe there's some nefarious agenda. And then I'll put it this way. If you go to any actually, I'll start this way. There's a meme. It says, please do not feed the animals because they will become dependent. Yeah. And, you know, so the meme then shows that and says, what's the difference between this and social programs? If you go to a human talking about deer population, someone who knows, like who lives out in a rural area, and ask them, what happens when the deer population grows too large? They'll say, oh, it's a disaster. Disease starts spreading. They start decimating local, you know, plant populations. You get an imbalance in the ecosystem. So hunters need to go out and actually start culling the herd. Then ask somebody, what happens if there's too many people on the planet? And they'll say, I don't know. Well,
I don't know. So this idea that humans are comparable to deer here, I would reject, because as the world population has increased, overall poverty globally has decreased.
Yes. But that's actually my point.
No, exactly. People are more capable of providing for themselves and finding creative solutions to scarcity than any animal is.
Well, the issue with it's not just deer, but any large population, hogs, for instance, it's not just decimating the environment, which I think humans do to a certain degree. It's also just the spread of disease. And then you also have the the Rat Utopia experiment, where you end up with what was it called? Culture.
The beautiful ones.
Yeah, but it was like, it wasn't called culture. Moral sink is what it's called.
Behavioral sink. Behavioral sink. Yeah.
Behavioral sink is one of the things that occurs. Are you familiar with that?
Never heard of it.
So there was the Rat Utopia experiment. Put a bunch of rats and or mice, like not and or rats or mice, different experiments, into a space with tons of food and water, and they could never had to worry about food or water. And what happened was, once they reached a certain population size, they started behaving in ridiculous ways. They started fighting each other. Some only groomed themselves. They, like, just basically their behavior started to degrade to the point where they wiped themselves out. And some of the mice or rats that were in the experiment were taken out and rescued and placed in regular populations, but retained the bad behaviors that ultimately, like, destroyed the previous Rat Utopia. So there's two ways to look at it. If we are overpopulated, I'm saying if we are. Some people think we're not. If we are, then we're going to end up with mass pollution. We're going to end up with serious disease, poverty, not necessarily poverty, but, you know, issues that will result in a collapse. If we are not overpopulated, but we are in overabundance, it's like either we go the Rat Utopia route, where all of a sudden we have behavioral sink, we destroy ourselves morally, ethically, and functionally, and then cease to exist. Or we overpopulate, we destroy our environment, and then choke ourselves to death on our own farts. Maybe that's a very pessimistic way of looking at things.
That's a little dark.
But I'm referring specifically I'm not saying those are true to happen. I'm just saying in reference to the fact there's a major war breaking out, that there's Great Reset people who are advocating for expanding the war. I'm just making these points. Maybe that's their view or something.
I don't think necessarily the world is overpopulated. I think the problem comes when if it is overpopulated and people also don't have a goal or something to actually do, which is why whenever I see this push for like a government dependency and people just needing the government to protect them and save them and do everything for them, that's when I get worried, because I'm like, okay, you're not actually doing anything to keep yourself, you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
I think you make a really good point, which I'll add on to. I don't think we're in the Rat Utopia yet. The Rat Utopia will happen the moment all of us agree the government should do everything for us. Because then you end up with the rats sitting around where the food and water was given to them.
Right.
So long as the rest of us are striving and have purpose and drive, we're resistant to that behavioral sink.
And also the ability to spread out, because the Rat Utopia experiment was all about being in an enclosed space. So if we can get off Earth, I think it's a big deal.
Yes, getting off Earth. But in the Rat Utopia, when there was space, they would still all go only in one side and densely pack in one small space. That's like cities.
That's like the idea of cities.
Exactly. Yeah. We could spread out, but we don't, because everyone wants to be by everyone else.
I was going to say, I think my conclusion this far, based on all the chaos we've seen, is that I don't think that people can live properly in cities. That's been my conclusion. I'm like, I don't think that's healthy for people. And maybe that's based on our talk about the rat utopia experiments, but people aren't meant to live that close together.
Yeah, I went to New York once. It was terrible.
Yeah, I want to add. I want to add.
I lived there once. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I want to add a caveat. I think I hear what you're saying, but I would argue that people are not meant to live that close to each other without accountability. So historically, people lived in tribes where in many cases you were really right on top of one another.
Right.
But people knew your face and they knew your name. So if you got out of line, that was going to be corrected very quickly. In cities, you're very close to other people, but there's this strange anonymity there.
I like to think of it this way. When it's like the various states of matter. When you live out in a rural area, you are in like a gaseous community. That means you as an individual can bounce around and do crazy stuff, freely moving around. As you move into more suburban areas, the amount you can move is less, so you're acting more like a liquid. And then when you live in cities, you're all stacked on top of each other, hard compressed, and you're stuck exactly where you're. So what I mean by this is, we have a sphere of freedom, and the closer you get to someone else, the more you're compressing that sphere. So for example, in New York, they pass crazy laws like you can't own guns, you can't have ammo, and you can't play drums in your house, for instance. Why? Because the noise would bother somebody and they would fight, and then they're like, no, you can't play loud music. Out here in the middle of nowhere, you can shoot guns.
Yeah.
Like not only can you have the guns,
exactly.
you can shoot them and be very, very noisy, and nobody cares because you have more space.
That could also explain why formation psychosis tends to appear with what you consider the liberal environment in the cities, because when you're so densely packed, information passes through you like atomically in a solid. You can fire current through it much faster than through a gas because it's just got something to move, or it's not getting bounced off of.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Basically, if you've got 10 people all smashed next to each other, and then you tap one on the shoulder and say, carrots are healthy, the information travels rapidly down the line because everyone conveys it to the other person.
Yeah.
Whereas, we don't even need to use the physics analogy. If you live in a rural area and someone knocks on your door and says, carrots are good for you, you have to get in your car and go drive to your neighbor's house and let them know. And that's very difficult relative to yelling out the window, hey, Jim, what? Carrots are good for you. All right. That's it, right?
No, it's true. Ideas travel and evolve more quickly in a more densely populated environment, for better or for worse, because that's true for good ideas.
I think for worse.
Good for bad ideas. Yeah, I think generally for worse, because even if you start with a good idea, it can be warped and twisted into something else. And to be fair, I think you could argue that a bad idea could sort of be twisted into something better. But
it's for worse because bad ideas travel really, really fast and need to be checked. And when something's traveling slowly, you have an opportunity for the truth to shut it down and then catch it as it's spreading. When you're in a city, you have a bad idea, it just ripples right through, travels halfway around the world before the truth can strap on its boots.
Same in crowds. If someone panics in a crowd, the entire crowd starts to move with that panic. That's similar to being in a city.
And for war, I just watched The Sum of All Fears. You guys ever see that movie, The Sum of All Fears?
No.
Oh man, you guys gotta see it. It's good.
When's it from?
Ben Affleck, I don't know, 2004 or something. Ben Affleck, Morgan Freeman, some other people. And basically what happens is there's like some organization is trying to trigger nuclear war between Russia and the US. And so a bomb goes off in Baltimore, and the US is like, it had to have been Russia. Russia's like, it wasn't us, but the US doesn't believe us. And then so the Russian president is like, keep our defenses on high alert. Then the president of the US goes, or an advisor says, Mr. President, Russia's just put all their defenses on high alert. And he's like, what? And he's like, get our fleets ready. Because he sees them reacting, and then they both start escalating to the point. But then I guess, something happens. I don't want to spoil the movie. Well, I guess it's from 2004, so I'm going to spoil anyway.
No, hold on. Let me take my headphones off.
So basically, Ben Affleck intervenes and gets a message sent to the Russian president saying, you're being played by terrorists. I know you didn't fire that. You didn't detonate that nuke in Baltimore. Stand down. It's the only way. And then Russia agrees and stands down all weapons. And then the U.S. says, stand down, stand down. But they were doing a countdown for a missile strike or whatever. Jeez. Basically, my point is, when one side gets scared and the information is rapid, then it's just escalation. So there was a story I heard once where like two guys got into a minor fender bender, but one guy was like road raging and really angry. And when he gets out, they're both armed. And the guy's all super angry, and he's like, you hit me, you rear-ended me. And the guy who rear-ended him, was an accident, sees that he's got a gun, so he puts his hand on his hip and says, back up, buddy. The other guy sees him reaching for his gun, so he grabs his gun. The other guy sees him grab his gun, he pulls his gun, and then the other guy pulls his gun, and then someone gets shot.
Yep.
Because they both, were in this heated moment. They're like, no, don't do it, stop, no. And they both pull their weapons out. So things like that can happen, Yeah. I hope that's not where we're going with this Russia stuff. But the issue, I suppose, is that no one's going to back down. No one will. Like, why would anyone back down? You know, it's. I actually, you know, I think maybe the West backs down in this one because we're the morally weaker. Like, maybe not morally weaker is the right word. We're the ideologically weaker faction here.
Well, didn't Russia offer terms to Ukraine today?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Ukraine was like, nope.
Really?
Yeah, they said Eastern region, the Donbass region, and Crimea are now Russia.
Can't join NATO, right?
You can't join NATO or any bloc like the EU or anything like that.
It kind of sounds like Ukraine is just gunning for EU/NATO membership at this point. It seems like they're using this conflict to push towards being joined with those groups. I don't know. That's just my observation. I'm not the foreign policy expert, but they are being incredibly stubborn. I don't know.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.